Welcome to the podcast. This is so exciting.
Damn, our first podcast.
So today, well, first of all, thank you for being here. Brian Morrison and Donna Ellis from Hands Up Productions. I've kind of revamped this into what I learned today. You guys are my first guests for what I have learned today. Oh. And this is a Stop Snitchin's Productions. A Stop Snitchin' Productions. We don't need to worry about me right now, but this is about you guys. But thank you for coming in. How are you feeling?
Good.
I feel a little nervous.
A little nervous. Okay. Well,
I should have peed before I started.
That's right. We'll take a break halfway through. You're fine.
That's always true.
We'll take a break halfway through. Don't worry about it. But anyway, I wanted to start off. I asked both of you to write introductions about each other. This is before we even talk about what you do, who you are. I asked Brian to write an intro for Donna, Donna to write an intro for Brian as business partners, just to see what we say. So, for Donna's intro, written by Brian.
Oh my gosh, Brian. Okay, go ahead. Do it.
Donna Ellis is the curly red-headed partner in Hands Up Productions. She's an incredibly accomplished interpreter, and her experience in the theater makes her the epitome of what a theatrical interpreter should strive to be. Brian often makes jokes that she is the substance of Hands Up, but it's not just because she keeps the business running. Her interpretations are so full of richness and meaning that the audience can't help but be in awe. I'm so thankful that she said yes to partnering up and creating Hands Up. It's truly an honor to stand next to her doing a show.
Oh my God, Brian.
Should we just end the podcast right there? It's all
right, everybody.
That's it. Thanks for coming.
And now we have Brian's intro, written by Donna. Brian Morrison is an accomplished leader in the field of American Sign Language interpreter education, an advocate for his students, and, as he loves to say, the style to my substance. Brian brings passion and care to all of his work. His creativity sets him apart. Although this external processor marvels at his internal processing, when the finished product emerges, it is thoughtful, clever, and beautiful. Brian is loved by his students, audiences, husband, dogs, and business partner.
Oh,
that was so good. I was so happy that I was like, you guys bought into it.
That was
nice. Whatever happens now doesn't matter. It's fine. We got what we needed. I can watch that on a bad day on repeat.
Right.
When I make you answer email, I just want you to read that back. Just remember.
Exactly.
So, needless to say,
oh my gosh.
We are talking about American Sign Language today. Particularly, we're talking about Hands Up Productions, which is your company, your baby.
Our 16-year-old
I was going to say,
driving baby.
How old is your baby now? 16 years old.
This is our sweet 16.
Oh my goodness.
Can you believe it?
How does it feel to have a mature... Does it feel like you have a matured business?
I do. I think it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do.
How do you describe what Hands Up Productions is? Because I think 16 years ago, knowing you is something very different than what it seems like you do today. You can both answer the question.
I think it's what we hoped it would be. I think we're doing what we hoped. Yeah.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
I think we're on track to our original vision. We've learned a lot about running a company, which is very different than, when you have an idea about something you want to do. We both love the theater and we both love interpreting. So we wanted to create a business that made the Philadelphia market accessible to deaf people. So that was the goal, but neither of us had any experience in business. That was the big learning curve.
Okay.
Yes. So I feel like the original goal we've achieved and continue to grow, but I'm proud of what we've learned about how to run a business. What do you think?
I agree. Because, no one knew. We didn't know.
So was the goal... So the goal was to bring accessibility to the deaf consumer in Philadelphia for the theatrics, the theater community particularly.
Yeah, I think, I think, and most importantly for me, I had recently moved to Philly at that time after going to Juilliard for interpreting in the theater stuff.
Is that where you went to school?
It was a week-long thing.
No, you count. You went there.
Program that's kind of like...
Okay.
It was a week-long residential program.
Got it.
But it was pretty
And it
was
inspired
intense.
you to think about this work in a different way.
Right. And so I think initially, it wasn't so much the business part. I just wanted to do the work.
Right.
I had, was like, oh, this was a new thing for me. I, had a couple of shows, a few things that I had done.
We did a show together. That's how we met.
Yeah.
Oh, what show did you do when you met together?
Chicago.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
Yes.
We had a really good time.
Yeah. No, that was fun. So yeah, I just really wanted to keep doing the work. And the other agency that had kind of, I think, really stopped by the point that we kind of took up reins. And so I almost didn't even think we would grow as much and be like, I don't know that I had that much foresight.
Yeah.
I think it was just like, I just want to do the work. Let's just get together and do the work.
But why the the performative interpreting? Why was that so important to each of you?
Performance interpreting?
The performance interpreting.
You think of interpreting, when you become an interpreter, you become a generalist. And over the course of a career, you become a specialist. Some people become specialists in working in educational settings, some in legal settings, some in medical settings. Our interest drove us to create a specialty in performance settings, I think just because of our love of theater.
Okay.
I think it really just started with a foundation in interpreting and being drawn toward creating access and also loving to provide access in that specialist realm of performance interpreting, which we've actually broadened. Originally, we talked about interpreting theater, that more and more we talk about the performing arts because it's broader than theater. There's working with arts organizations in Philadelphia and New Jersey. There's museum work, there are concerts. It's more than I think what we initially imagined, which was just like Broadway musicals. But I definitely brought from there.
What could be more important? Broadway musicals, the peak, the tip of the iceberg.
Music.
But I'm curious for something so you, Donna, have a background in performing, in being on stage and looking for that light and finding it. Did you have that same thing, Brian?
I had done little community theater things when I was in high school. After high school and when I went on to college, I didn't do anything. But I had done, I was in the kids group and the Matchmaker. And I was in the production of A Christmas Carol. And
I just wonder what's that feel like when the lights are on you? Because I think for people who have never seen it, you are... I don't want to disrespect and say you're the show, but you're a show. You're
very prominent.
You are happening. Everybody knows that you are there, right? You got your own spotlight, and it's hard to not see you.
It's a visual language.
It is a visual language, and it's beautiful. So I'm just curious, did you take to that very quickly?
You know what? I don't know that I did when I was in, because I guess maybe I wanted to. But I didn't have the voice, I couldn't be the singer and be, in theater like I wanted to be in theater. So this was kind of then my way of being in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because, for reference, for an audience who's never met you, what are some of the venues that Hands Up Productions works in Philadelphia?
We work at, I'll start, but you fill us in.
Yeah, go ahead.
We work closely with the Kimmel Center. So the Kimmel Center's campus includes the Academy of Music, the it's called the Miller Theater now, the Forest Theater, and the Kimmel Center itself. We work closely with the Arden Theater. We do great work with the Walnut Street Theater, Philadelphia Theater Company, People's Light, Hedgerow Theater Company. Oh my gosh, I'm going to forget them.
But I just want everyone to kind of see, and that's just live theater. That's not concert work.
Right.
That's not museums.
Right.
So for scale, you're standing in front of thousands of people, at least hundreds. But if we're talking about the Academy of Music and it's Wicked thousands. Is going, it's thousands of people that are in there that you're standing in front of.
But and I say this to interpreting, not just students, but people who are already proficient interpreters and have anxiety about doing this kind of specialty work.
Yes.
That really the work that we do every day as interpreters is in front of people. We are in front of people all the time. It's the nature of the work. And it's interesting to me that there's a higher level of anxiety around doing performing work. Maybe it is that spotlight that you talked, maybe it's the physical spotlight, but in fact we work in front of people all the time. Now, in performing work, you're dealing with other challenges. You're working with poetic language. You're working with pacing issues. But you also have the text. I say to people all the time, you go to work every single day. You don't know any of the words. I'm going to give you all the words 8 weeks before you have to do this thing. And I'm going to give you a coach to help you through it, and a team, and a structure to get from here to there. But you're right. There is an anxiety. There is it is perceived differently by even the interpreter doing performing work than all the other work we do. And I just find that interesting.
That's what I mean. I think that's why I like the different perspective, because I think it's more of you don't think about it. It sounds like you don't think about the scale of the size. Yes.
I don't think about the scale, but you know me. Something I've shared with you is that I get nervous. I'm always nervous before a show. Yeah. Now, over time, you sort of develop muscle memory and also faith in yourself to know you're going to be nervous and you're going to be okay. For me, that light helps me, because as soon as that light comes up, I can't see anybody and I'm fine. I don't really want to see them. Yeah. And when the light comes up, then I'm fine, and I know that that's what's going to settle for me. But I'm always nervous, I like to think, because I care very much, and I really want to show up for myself and for the work.
Are you nervous too?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I have my little ritual to help me not be nervous is when that announcement, "Hi, you're about to watch the show. Please turn your phones off, unwrap your candies, blah blah blah." I need to do that.
I love that. I hate doing that. That's why we're good partners.
The turning your phone off.
Yes. I need to be the one when I do there. I need to be the one to stand up and interpret it.
Why?
Sorry.
Because for me, that then gets me started. And I feel like then if I can because it's the starting that's always a little and maybe it's just, the placebo effect. I think that by getting up and standing and doing this part, I'm warmed up now, and when the show starts, I'm going to be ready. So it's like, that's my way of getting it out.
You jump in the deep end first.
Yes,
you get to take the cold plunge first. I'm curious, because like you said, there's been this evolution of Hands Up Productions from what it was to what it is now. What do you both agree on what the biggest value is that you bring to a deaf consumer now in Hands Up Productions? Is it top-notch interpretive performance theater? Is it giving accessibility to all of these, wonderful deaf consumers who want to see it? Like, where do you each see, what's the biggest thing that Hands Up Production brings now?
I think that was our mission statement, which is bringing high quality theatrical or performance interpreting to the Philadelphia region.
Yeah, and we also have to really shout out the theater community.
Yes.
In Philadelphia, that is just
on board. They mean it when they say they want to be accessible. They want to attract underserved audiences. They mean it and they do it, and we're grateful to them.
Yeah, and just because, we look at our season and we are just, there are so many options for deaf people now to go to performances that they never had before. And it's, and it's nice to see, it's disappointing sometimes, and I think it's just the byproduct of having so many options. Some shows have a lot of people, and some shows might not have as big an audience. But if there's one or two people in that crowd, they're seeing that show and they love it. So I think I think you see that with the hearing population.
And is it surprising sometimes when you think you're about to go do the show and you're like, how many people could possibly be interested in this? And then suddenly it's a packed house. You're like, oh my gosh, everyone loves this?
Something I try to get clear right from the beginning of our relationships with theaters is what those numbers really represent, what those numbers really mean. Typically in Philadelphia, if you think about how many people live in the city of Philadelphia, about 1% statistically are theater goers. Now, if you take a low incidence population like the deaf community who uses ASL, a culturally deaf community, some deaf people wouldn't identify as being culturally deaf, like my father, for example. He is on an audiogram, probably close to deaf, but he has been a hearing person all of his life. His first language is English. So we're talking about a population who identifies as deaf culturally and uses ASL. Very low incidence, small numbers, all around the world.
Right.
Then you get 1% of that community to come to the theater. And you really have to reset your expectations about what is a successful turnout. So and also remember that in a deaf family, when we get a deaf family to come to the theater together, often that is a mother, a father, a sibling, and one deaf child, but they all come together.
Right.
Or it's 2 deaf parents and 2 hearing children, but they all come together. So when we get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people to come, that's a really great number statistically. But then, and it happens more and more, and a real shout out to the deaf community who shows up for us, spreads the word for us, champions us, appreciates us, and works with us as part of our teams. Really, they are what makes this successful. They're who the work is for, and more, that's who the work is done with. So when those numbers start to grow, the most recent show we just did at the Walnut Street Theater, we just did Beauty and the Beast 2 weeks ago, and we sold out our block. And then they extended the block, and we sold out that block. But even then, we're talking about 25, 35?
It's like 26.
26 seats.
But per block.
26 seats. But that's a huge number. So you really have to keep the statistics in mind about what success is. And just feel a lot of joy about seeing families come to the theater together, share an experience together.
It's beautiful.
It is.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of someone's watching this, right, who's not deaf, never heard of you, ASL, anything like that. So, Brian, you moonlight as the
what is your job, Brian?
Yes.
Community College of Philadelphia, the interpreter training program.
Yes. So, Community College of Philadelphia, we have an interpreter training program. So, people that want to become sign language interpreters, I teach them how to do that. So, we have language courses, and then we have the interpreting courses. So, students will take the gamut of that. But we also have people that just come and take sign language classes.
Right.
If you just want a sign language class.
So, my question, I'll focus this at you, just for fun. No pressure. Is I think, and I could be wrong, hearing audiences would think that you get the script to Wicked and then you translate that script. And that's what you provide for a deaf audience. But I don't think that's what you do. How could you describe the difference between translating something and interpreting an artistic... how do you interpret supercalifragilisticexpialidocious? That's not a thing, right? How do you describe that to people?
Can I just clear up the linguistic part of it?
Yes, I know. I'm just speaking as a layman.
No, and that's who your audience is. So I appreciate that. Just translating is to paper, and interpreting is through the air. So my sister-in-law is a translator, right? Okay. She works from Spanish on paper to Spanish on paper. Well, we're interpreters. We work through the air, but there is a translation part of the work when you're looking at the text as we call it a frozen text, but it's the written text. Sometimes there's some translation work on paper, and then it becomes an interpretation. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah. So it's not it's not a word for word situation, but we just we take what's the story, what's the story, we tell the story in ASL, and we have deaf people that work with us on our teams that are bilingual, fluent in ASL and English, and we're like, hey, this is English, what does this look like in ASL?
Oh, okay. So you'll work with like a deaf coach to help with that, not translation, the interpretation of this work to
sometimes
a deaf audience.
Sometimes a little both. Sometimes it's like, what does this mean? Give me, and sometimes we do decide a translation.
Right.
If there's something like we want to make it artistic and we sign together. Yeah. Something together. We'll determine what that is and we will translate that onto the paper.
Sometimes the language is either a pun or it's Shakespeare or it's nonsense language where you have to make some... Or if we're signing together, then we really have to choose the exact same signs. That's where more translation.
And I guess what I think of, which is why I think it's so interesting, is because without saying it, you're not taking liberties on someone else's work, but you do have to convey this message in a different way. You have to understand, like you said, not just the words, but what's the story about? What's the theme? What's the show? What is this character? Who is she or he emotionally right now? And getting that out there, it's very different than I think if you were watching. I think of what people do today. You can watch Netflix with Spanish subtitles. I don't know how good that is. But there's a reason you can't just go to ASL on Netflix, because you would need someone to have interpreted all of this content.
But shout out to HBO Max, who just put out an ASL version of Barbie.
Really? The movie?
With a deaf interpreter. So check it out and tell HBO Max to keep it up.
I have not heard about that. Yes. Wait, are they on screen? Like
yes.
a traditional?
On screen. They're in the corner, and the whole movie, it's the same person. So here's a little tip.
Yeah.
Even if you don't watch it, just press it and turn it on and go about cleaning, because Max, those HBO, numbers. Is going to look and see, is this being utilized, and should we do this with more movies?
And you guys have watched it? What's your... I assume we're not talking to HBO.
I haven't watched
what do you think?
The whole movie yet, but I did watch the beginning with the interpreter.
Just get the numbers up,
Yeah.
No.
I am going to watch it all, but...
And it's a deaf interpreter.
Yeah.
It's a deaf artist.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was
really cool.
Yeah.
It is really cool. Yeah. It can be done.
Interesting. So we know
Yeah.
you can get it started with Brian at the Community College of Philadelphia if you're looking to do that.
Yes.
You've had this whole start. I'm just curious, what are some of your favorite roles or plays, moments, people you've gotten to be? I have to imagine there's some sort of like imaginative, young, youthful piece of you that gets to be Elphaba, right? Like,
right.
He knows that that's what I really enjoy.
Because you do kind of have to become that person, right? When you're up there and you're signing, like you said, you're interacting with each other. This is person to person, right?
Right. The words in a play, in a performance, aren't just the words. It's how they say them. It's how they interact with each other. And when I was doing Kinky Boots, this is just an idea of what I know. Kinky Boots, what?
Yeah.
So the lead actor character in Kinky Boots, we rehearsed, and I had practiced with this person, all these 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And then that actor portrayed that character a certain way. Like there was an extra, it was the same line. But it was a little snarky. Now, the night of the show, there was an understudy for that lead character.
Oh, gosh.
So that actor chose to play less snarky, a little bit more subtle, soft-hearted kind of thing. But they were the same lines they were saying. But that actor's choice made a difference in how the lines are delivered. So as interpreters, I can't just say the line without conveying how that is told.
And you're building this person's personality and persona over the course of the interpretation of the show, right?
Right. And so that's the piece, that I think is a little extra fun, because it's not just the words, but it's the totality of the performance.
It's the language that most hearing people don't think about, right? It's your tone of voice. It's your it's the snark. It's the sarcasm.
But we do watch a hearing audience to inform the interpretation. So a lot of times, if we're struggling with like a joke, puns are difficult. Please stop writing those puns. Puns are our challenge. And we can look to the hearing audience to see, is it funny? Are they laughing? Are they rolling their eyes? Are they guffawing? And that informs how we make a visual pun.
Okay.
So that it's a similar but not same experience for a deaf audience, to pull them through the waves of the show. Like there's ups, there's downs, there's also the rhythm that we want them to also. There's a reason why an author has like a sweet moment and then scares you, or an up moment and then calms you down. So like there's also the feel of the show that we keep our eyes on, and a lot of times how the audience reacts gives us a lot of information about how to build the interpretation. But I want to say something real quick to clarify, because when you were talking about Kinky Boots, that you worked with them 2 or 3 times. I don't want an audience to think that was your prep.
Right. Yeah. No. No. We actually prep and work with the show for like 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work beforehand with the script in groups. When we actually are rehearsing, when we get to the point at the end of the 8 weeks where we're actually in the theater rehearsing with that performance. Like a lot of times we interpret a show on a Friday. So shows will open on Tuesday. So we go on Tuesday, we watch it. Wednesday and Thursday we rehearse with the show happening on stage. We're back in the theater, and then Friday is the show. So I had a couple of chances to see this actual cast.
And those rehearsals are called
Hands Up rehearsals.
Oh my gosh, look at that, a full circle moment.
But what Brian is talking about is when we're doing tours. So there are
right.
2 separate parts to the preparation process. There's what I would call table work, where you're sitting with your team with the script open, working through the text. I call it looking for trouble. Trouble is puns and double meanings and pace and nonsense language and supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. All those are problems. So you look for problems and then we solve problems. That's all happening around the table, script open. In between the table work, where we're meeting face to face, we're all working on our own. Right? I'm working through my material, he's working through his material, working on their material. Then we meet at the table. We work, and then we meet at the table. Then after the table work is done, we go on to what we call the hands up work. That's why we called ourselves Hands Up Productions. Hands up means scripts down, hands up. Now we're in the theater. The show is going. Scripts down, hands up with our coach. Coach has also been at the table with us. Now the coach is watching our work, taking notes while we're working live in the theater, making a mess of it. You got to keep those hands up. Then we get feedback. Then we come back the next night. We do the same thing, hands up again, sometimes 3 times. Hamilton, how many did we do? 4? Hands up rehearsals, right? And then we go. Now that's a tour because we don't have access to the show until that tour arrives in town.
Right.
Typically the tour arrives in town.
Sorry.
Time's up.
No, you're good. I'm stopping it.
Time's up.
I'm stopping. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Should I keep going? Typically the tour arrives in town on a Monday. We see the show Tuesday. We hands up Wednesday, Thursday. We go Friday. That's a tour. So if it's a show like The Walnut or The Arden, where it's produced locally, we have access to that show before we have to interpret it. So we have much more access. So we would probably reverse it. We'd see the show first. Isn't that novel? We'd see the show first. Then we would do table work. Then we would do hands up, and then we would do the show. So that's just to give you an idea of the structure of what the prep looks like.
What I wanted to segue into now is 16 years ago, it's Donna and Brian in a room with a script.
Starbucks.
We'll take Starbucks sponsorships, HBO Max sponsorships. These are the big Apple. Anything you want to throw us a bone, they will take that. It will go to a great cause.
Hands Up Productions truly was born at Starbucks. We met for 1 year every Friday at Starbucks. That is how we did it.
And what I have to think now is, assuming in 16 years you've grown your business, how do you find more people? Interpreters, but I'm going to say, I would assume it's a different skill set at let's call it a higher level of understanding of probably the English language as well as ASL. Sure. How do you find more people to do this work?
You grow them.
From the ground like a seed?
Well, in a lot of ways, it starts through, a program like Brian and Brian's actual program where he trains a generalist, right? Gets them into the field, and then he has an early eye on who really looks like they might have some potential to become a specialist in performance interpreting. It doesn't mean that others might not have specialist possibilities in others. And then we might invite them to intern with us. We might invite them to... sometimes we need what we call a feed interpreter. If we have a deaf interpreter on our team as one of the interpreters, as well as a deaf coach, that interpreter on the team needs a hearing interpreter, if you will, to feed them text or to feed them context information so that they can be on time, whatever, with the interpretation, whatever that deaf interpreter needs.
Okay.
We might invite them to be a feed interpreter until they're ready to sort of start to take our workshops or start to take some more intensive training from Hands Up.
So Brian, from like the educational perspective, We're not saying if you're in Brian's class, Brian's picking favorites. There's nothing like that happening.
I don't have favorites.
There's no favorites. But from your perspective, because you can see that transition from being someone in a classroom to being like, I think you could do this. What are some like attributes that you see in somebody that you'd say, hey, you know what? We want you to sit with us.
Right. I think definitely first and foremost, we want to look at language. Yeah. Because theater scripts can be like, we talked about puns, nods. Like there's a lot of contextual information that people really need to just have a good command of ASL and English to be able to interpret that. So it's a student that might have really good language skills. I've had students in the past that have had acting, theater backgrounds.
Yeah. Okay.
That come in, so they do want to do that. Or even just, sometimes it's not about, I just had a student this past year, she's getting ready, she'll graduate in May. Two students, along with another one of our interpreters, did a cute little high school show.
Okay.
And so the interpreter that works with us she also works with me at CCP, the interpreter.
Yeah.
And she recruited these two students. Well, she recruited one student. One student I kind of voluntold. She was like,
that's good.
I don't know, should I? Yes, I'm telling her right now that you are doing the show. And I said, and just kind of made her do it because I just thought she needed to step out of that box and really be able to do it. And like, we said before, you have all the words. Mm-hmm. You have the entire set of words from start to finish. Here you go. And I don't know that she was one that I would initially have, like last semester, been like, oh, she's going to be good for theater.
Okay.
But this was something I knew that she needed to do. And now she loves it. And she's interested. We're working with, the program's working with the theater in New Jersey. One of our interpreting mentors does some theater stuff at a theater in Jersey that's like a children's theater type thing.
Yeah.
So she's going to work with several of our students on some little kid shows there. And a lot of these same, that one student that I didn't think would be interested in theater is now like
going for it.
Right there wanting to do it. So yeah, it's kind of seeing it and just personality.
I was going to say, you need a certain amount of confidence to do this work, don't you think?
I think ultimately you do. I don't think initially you do.
Okay.
I think because that was one of my students' issues was a severe lack of confidence. Right. And so I think it's something that can help develop that.
And it's a physical language, right? There's posturing, there's
exactly.
body language.
Yes, so there's a lot, right. So it even if
you have to do it. Yeah. I think there's anxiety about doing the work, period. Confidence building about just interpreting, period. Finding ways to pick up your hands that are low consequence settings, like working with your peers in a children's theater show. Low consequence, high reward, hands up, practice.
Yeah.
Will make them better no matter how they choose to apply the skill.
Yeah, but personality is a big thing because you're working closely with the team. And so sometimes it might be,
watching both of you react to the teamwork aspect is
like and that dynamic has to create the dynamic of the actors on stage.
And I'd have to imagine too, right? You two, if you needed to tomorrow, doing something you've done a million times, whatever, Aladdin, something you've done a bunch of times, especially if you've worked together, you guys have built chemistry.
Yeah.
You want trust, but also if you look at him a certain way, or if you whatever, I've talked to you after shows. There's things that you do impromptu that you've never done before, but it works in this moment because you have this chemistry together. Now you have much more chemistry than two people that you would just be putting on a team together. But getting along, being a teammate, being positive, putting the work in, being collaborative. You can't you could just go up there and you both know your roles, but you don't get that same passion without a connection, right?
certain things you can't teach, and both of us know when that quality is there, someone who is going to show up, is going to have your back, is going to take feedback, is going to bring joy and a positive attitude to the work, but needs some language work, needs some refinement, I'll take that person any day of the week than someone who's mastered both language and is not somebody that I want to work with, or does or brings the team down. I want someone who's going to bring the team up, because you know what, that moment's going to happen. We just Beauty and the Beast, we had 2 understudies that night, so things change, and I need to know my team. We're both there for the same reason, not for me and not for you, but for this. We are going to tell the show, and I know that if I drop something, he's got it. And if you drop something, you know I have it. And if something new comes up, I'm going to follow it. And so are you. So you really need someone who's going to bring that team up and not pull that team down. And if you've got that, and you've got enough language that you can tear it down and build it back up, because that's what Brian means when he talks about enough language you can play with it, that you can mess with it. Like you can in English. You can play with jokes and puns. You need enough to play with it. If you have enough to play with it, but you're not quite where you need to be, but you've got that unteachable thing, we're going to take you any day of the week.
Yeah, it's a special person. So then I'm curious, because I know, looking at handsupproductions.com, if you have these workshops, right? For me too, this stagecraft thing, that's new. I will intro it as this. I've always known that Hands Up Productions does Breaking Down Broadway, which I'm not going to explain. You can explain that. But it seemed like if Breaking Down Broadway is like going to the major leagues, then stagecraft is an introductory league way of, it seems like you could be a student, you could just be interested, you could have a little language, you could have a lot of language. That's where you can start. Breaking Down Broadway, which we can explain both of these things, is more of, you are now tracking into working with Hands Up Productions, right? Like it is a pipeline. If we would hope if it can work out that way.
Yeah, it really has become that.
Yeah.
So what is... Sorry, that's a bit long-winded. So what is stagecraft?
Me, you.
Either one.
So stagecraft is our introductory one day. And that's the one we've actually had from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fairly early on. And yeah, that's just our one day. Here's what it is. This is just, here's all the stuff that we do. Here's what theater interpreting is. We give them activities that they actually get to take a little piece of a script, break it down, practice with it, and come back and perform it.
Okay.
So that's just our one day kind of, here it is.
So it's like a condensed Breaking Down Broadway.
It's really just...
It's more like the preface.
It's like the first
to the
2
book.
hours of Breaking Down Broadway.
Yeah.
The first 2 hours, you said?
Yeah, of Breaking Down Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think that's good for anybody interested in that to understand the scale that we're talking about. Because how long is Breaking Down Broadway?
So we take... Stagecraft is our one day introduction... interpreting for the theater. Here's all the information. Apply it. See if it's for you.
A group
it's a
workshop. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Then Breaking Down Broadway is our 10-month intensive where we take the skills that we introduce in stagecraft and apply throughout a 10-month period. So I'm going to try to explain this succinctly, jump right in. So basically what we do is people will send us video samples, and we select 6 candidates to join us for a cohort. We then, based on the cohort, we choose a show that well suits this cohort. This cohort right now is the first time we've had all women, so we're working with the text of Little Women, the musical, which is a great musical, underappreciated, and you should watch it. It's
interesting.
A great show.
That's
great
awesome.
So we take the text of Little Women for 10 months. We break our cohort into 2 teams, Act 1 and Act 2. So Act 1 works on Act 1, and Act 2 works on Act 2. We meet with the cohort in person every other month for 10 months. And when we are meeting in person is when we meet for 3 hours. The first hours, like for the good of the group, any parts of our workshop, talking about interpreting for the theater tips and tools and answering questions for the good of the group. Then they split off for about an hour and a half and work with ASL mentors. We bring in deaf coaches, we bring in hearing mentors, to work on maybe 10 to 15 pages of the text from Act 1, 10 to 15 pages of the text from Act 2. Intensive. Then they have to, for the last hour, present some of their work and get feedback. In between the 2 months, they work on their own for the next 10 pages and the next 10 pages until they have fully produced work for Act 1, fully produced work for Act 2, and then the finale, they are working with a recording of the show. The finale, we play the recording, and Act 1 presents the show, and Act 2 presents their show, Act 1 and Act 2. In the audience, we only have previous cohort members and any mentors who've joined us over the course of the workshop. But watching those cohorts from day one, when they're looking around like deer with these scripts, to the last day when they do that show beautifully, is so hard. When you watch them bond over the fear and anxiety of it, we remind them
Trauma
constantly.
bonding over this experience, yeah.
So we remind them over and over and over again that it's a workshop. It's a workshop day one, and it's a workshop on the last day. It's not open to the public. It's always a workshop. It's a safe place to play and explore and ask questions and apply, and get those hands up and get feedback from incredibly generous resources in our community, deaf performers, deaf coaches, hearing interpreters, hearing colleagues. To tell you the truth, many times have said how much I wish I could have participated in a program like this when I was learning. And then at the end of 10 months, whether or not they choose to pursue work in performance interpreting, the skills that they've learned will make them better interpreters no matter what kind of interpreting they decide to do.
You're never going to be scared of a dentist appointment again in your life.
Was that clear? That was hard.
That's very clear.
Kind of, yeah.
make that
I'd say
better?
the TLDR
What's
is too long didn't read.
Yeah,
Is that what the kids say these days?
TLDR.
TLDR.
I can't lie, I haven't heard of that, but I do
What I
like
learned
that
today.
though.
What I learned
That
today.
is what I learned today.
What I
yes.
learned today is basically what we're doing is mimicking our 8-week process on a regular show that we would just do.
Right.
And we're extending that out into a classroom structured setting.
Right.
10 months.
Over the
Right.
10 months.
That's what I mean though. 8 weeks
Yes.
is what you guys
So
can
we
And
do.
then you
do-
take that.
Yeah.
That's what real life is. Yeah.
Right, and you bring it
Right.
all the way back down.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, here it is. And then understand, we're giving them half a show.
Right.
You know, we're doing this in 8 weeks for a full show.
Right.
They're doing 10 months in half a show.
And by the way, for context, you both are not meeting up at Starbucks or sitting in your houses all day only figuring out how to interpret a Vita.
Right.
You're running an entire interpreting program. You're doing a private practice
Both have
thing.
freelance practices as well, right?
So there's all other stuff
Exactly.
happening, and
Exactly.
then every
And
once in a while we come back and we do a show.
That's
You
right.
come back over here.
For the fun of it.
But how many cohorts have gone through Breaking Down Broadway now?
This is our 5th.
Wow.
Yeah, I
And
know.
6 cohorts, roughly a cohort?
6 people per cohort.
So it's about
right?
30 people now that have gone through.
But I'm going to take this opportunity. We do have an exciting opportunity coming up.
Yes,
everybody out
tell
there.
us.
We are in partnership with the New Jersey Theater Alliance. The New Jersey is looking to expand the resources of having performance interpretings for the state of New Jersey. It's hard to find people in these specialties. So they reached out to us and we provided a series of trainings for them. So far, we've done our one-day training of stagecraft in the southern part of the state. We're going to be providing a one-day training in the northern part of the state, and that's going to be followed up. What is that? Oh, he said we're not
Oh,
supposed
no, you're
to
fine.
touch
You're
the
fine. It's
table.
okay. It's okay. It's okay.
He's taking care
I'm
of
taking
me.
my feedback.
I
as
thought
I'm
he was
learning
saying,
from
cut.
me.
Cut.
We,
No.
we get feedback and we apply. That's what we
Good.
do.
You're fine. You're fine.
It's
We're going
the
to make it
teacher
work.
in me like,
Don't touch the
don't touch the table.
You heard what he said. Stop that.
Oh my gosh. So, but the goal is very soon we'll be announcing we're going to be doing like an abbreviated version of Breaking Down Broadway just for New Jersey in partnership with the New Jersey Theater Alliance.
Wow.
What else can you say about
Well,
that?
and when we say abbreviated,
Yeah, what is that?
it's
look
not,
like?
it's actually, so the way we structure the 10-month one now is like we get together for 3
Yes, that's a good point.
hours
Yeah.
on a Sunday, the second Sunday of the
Yeah.
month starting in October. And we meet for 3 hours every other Sunday
Every
over
other,
10 months.
not every other Sunday.
Every other month.
Yes.
Every other month. Could be a Sunday.
Yes.
is a Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, it's the second Sunday every other month. So it's like October, December,
Got it.
February. and that stretches it out. And I think it's a total, we build in like 20 hours.
Okay.
So what we're looking at, the abbreviated one for New Jersey, is not less. It's less time physically because we're trying a pilot, and we're gonna see where still in the planning stages.
Yes.
But instead of the 10-month for 3 hours, we're doing a Saturday. We're doing 3 months, but it's like a Saturday 9 to 4 and a Sunday 9 to 12. 1 month. The next month, a Saturday 9 to 4 and a Sunday 9 to 12 and a Sunday.
Okay.
So
less time in between, and
less
we're doing
time
more time together.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Yes.
And that actually turned, I think I calculate, it's like 27 hours.
Right.
As opposed to the 20 hours. Okay. So maybe we'll do a follow-up podcast.
Yeah,
I can tell you how that went.
It goes. But you know,
because we don't know. Like, we just, it's just a new thing for us.
I was thinking that as a time commitment, right? I mean, you have to think about that when you're signing up for something like this. You have to want to do this because it's going to require. Right. And by the way, it's not just time. It's then when we're not with you, you're going to show up in front of your peers and present something that you would like to hopefully be proud of eventually, even if it's not perfect. So I think that's great. You've got a 1 day, you've got a 3 month, you've got a 10 month, and trying to make that work. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
And to your question, trying to grow the pool. The demand, I feel really proud that the demand is as high as it is in Philadelphia. I do think that that's a direct reflection of the work we've done in the region, but also the demand that's now coming from the deaf community. But we don't have the resources to keep up with it, which is the trained interpreter. So this is us trying to respond to a demand, which, is growing even up through the state of New Jersey.
Now I want to ask you about something totally different that maybe... I know you didn't forget about it, but I don't think it's given enough credit in its novelty, is this idea of shadow interpreting. For anyone who doesn't know, and if you think you're buying a ticket to a show and then suddenly it's the shadow interpreted performance,
you're in for a treat.
It's wild, right? So I'm going to explain it from what I see, is if you buy a ticket to a show, which you may not know is the shadow interpreted show, this is where Donna, Brian, whoever's on the team is blocked in on stage with the characters. And depending on how flexible and comfortable the characters are, maybe the characters are signing a little bit. Traditionally, I've seen it in children's shows majority, just because, like you said, I think there's a little bit more time there with them. But it's this whole other thing that I've never heard of in New York. I've never heard of that in DC. I've never heard... I mean, of course, you can tell me. But is that something you came up with? Like, what is shadowed interpreting? How did that end up being a thing you thought could work?
I think the way we do it, we've come up with, but the concept existed.
Did I describe it correctly? Shadowed interpreting?
Job.
Is that
perfect?
Yeah.
Typically, when people go to see an interpreted show, what they picture is what we call platform interpreting. So the show's over here, and the interpreters are standing in a place from which they don't move. And the audience has to watch the show over here and then the interpreted information over there, and they go back and forth. So that's a platform interpreter. There's something in between shadowing, which is called zoning, where you take those platform interpreters and you put them in the playing space. They still don't move, but now you're not going back and forth. You're just sort of zoned in the playing space. Very, very rare. I think we've done it a handful of times and maybe even within a shadowed interpreted context. Then shadow interpreting is where the interpreters are blocked in the space with the actor. So all the information and the interpretation is all happening in the same space. For us, we do it typically with the Arden, and shout out to the Arden and any other theater who wants to do it. Talk to the Arden or talk to us. It's a great experience for the actors, for the theater, for the audience, both hearing and deaf. But it takes a lot more rehearsal time. We have to do like 3 different put-in rehearsals with the cast.
I was going to say, you probably need a little bit more than a couple hands-ups before you're in there.
And it's taken some seasons to get the buy-in from the actors, because these actors are doing 8 shows a week.
Of course.
And now they have to do 3 more put-ins with these interpreters. But it has become the show they look for. When they get cast at the Arden, at the Children's Theater, they know they get to do the shadowed show, and it's like a thing now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like it's a great thing.
But I have to imagine for the shadowed do you see the biggest smiles on the faces of children? Is that... That's the
Peter Pan.
That's the audience, right? I have to imagine the parents who are like, thank God, this is like a thing that I can take my
well,
deaf
exactly.
child to.
Or a deaf family bringing their hearing kids to. But yeah, so a lot of that, Donna was talking about that watching the show and then watching the interpreters, that little kind of ping pong effect. That's a skill that a lot of kids, deaf people, have to learn. Mm-hmm. And so kids, if you take children to the theater, and a lot of these deaf kids are coming, they've never seen a play, been to the theater at all. Yeah. So this is the first time that they're there. Right. So they're now able to, they don't have to, most of they just want to watch the show, but they'll miss the language because the interpreter's over here. Mm. But now they put it in here. We have the language in there so they can see it all. And they love it, especially, when the hearing characters sign.
That must be like, do you hear them in the audience?
Listen, Brian and I can work on this show for 12 weeks. We can bust our butts over the line. We're about to do BFG. You want to look at that script? It's one nonsense word after another. Yeah. It doesn't matter because what trumps everything?
Peter Pan can sign.
Peter Pan said
Peter Pan signed. He signed. That's my language. So they're thrilled that they see that.
That's an amazing thing to give to a child, right?
Exactly.
They talk about inclusion in TV shows or in sports or in business, and then you see Peter Pan signing, and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah. So it is a special, it is an extra special. It is extra work. But yeah, seeing
what's
those
kids. The feedback you get from the hearing audience for someone who buys a ticket to that and shows up? Are they like, what the hell? Why?
I think early on, that might have been the case. Like when our first year or two, I think doing the shadowed shows.
I feel like in the beginning we were nervous about it. So any positive feedback we made sure was funneled to the people who needed to hear it. But overwhelming, like families, I don't know if have we had a lot of...
I do remember seeing or hearing something like on a blog or on a post or something a while back. This was like literally probably 12, 13 years ago when we were first doing it.
But it still stings when it's there.
Yeah, it's like you had 46 other opportunities to go see this show. The deaf people had one. Shut up. But I also...
No, but now you do. There is this hearing audience that everyone wants inclusion. Yeah. Everybody wants their child to be exposed to something new. You're at a children's show. It has to engage adults more, too, who are like, I thought I was just going to sit at Peter Pan. What am I watching here? It's novel.
It's also really great exposure to those hearing kids. Like when I was coming up, interpreting wasn't a field that came up as an option on my 8th grade aptitude test. It wasn't a field. But now more and more kids see interpreting in the world and see it as a thing they can do. So often after those shows, the parents and the kids want to come up to us and ask us, what is this thing? And how do I do this thing? It's good exposure to deaf or hearing.
Yeah, and I think you see interpreters so many places now on TV, the White House press briefings always have an interpreter at the streamed, site. So it's just something we're seeing.
So we have who you are, what you do, ways to get in contact with you, educational programming, casual, fun, HBO Max, all this stuff. Only question is, what does 2024 look like for each of you with Hands Up? Is there one goal? Do you each, I don't know, maybe you haven't even talked to each other about this, but what's the one thing you both want for Hands Up in 2024?
I feel like in the last couple of years, we've had to learn to use our time better. In the beginning years, Brian and I interpreted every show, right? Mm-hmm. Then that got too much. So we decided one of us would be on a show with the team because it was hard to let the ball go to somebody who wasn't us.
Of course.
Then that got to be too much. And we had to let teams go out without us on it. And so Brian and I did whatever shows we wanted to do in the season. Mm-hmm. But that still became too much. And then I think pre-COVID, I decided for me, I wanted to do a show every other month. There were times we were doing 2 a month. I thought I was going to die. So trying to do it. So really just trying to plan my schedule better, because I really have found so much joy in the educational part of what we do. The workshops is where feels more novel and where the growth is, and growing people is really sort of, it's just exciting to me. And it's definitely where I would like to grow more. So to rebalance how much I'm committing to actually interpreting so that we can focus on growing that track. What about you? How about you, Brian?
See, and I would almost say, for me, it's almost a little bit of the opposite. I think because my full-time job is teaching, doing the work is when Brian, gets to actually do work now.
Interesting.
And so I don't, because of my teaching, I don't get to freelance and do as much interpreting as I want.
Because I'm full-time freelance. I'm working all the time. That's
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I get to teach people.
Yeah.
We're
such a good partnership.
And exactly. So, and not that I love that aspect too.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy the work, and I think I've overloaded my spring because I have a show in January, February, March, April.
Careful what you wish
just said you wanted to do.
I know, and I wanted to do more shows.
He's committed.
And they're show, like one show I've done before, so that's not a that's not a big deal.
No big deal.
But I definitely love the education piece. Obviously, I'm a teacher, so I do enjoy that piece. But I also really just like getting my hands on work because I don't get to do that as much as I would like. And I think too, we haven't really mentioned. We did talk about the education piece a little bit, but we are starting. I think in 2024, we're going to hopefully really expand and look at training more deaf folks to be a part of our work as ASL coaches.
But
trying to
highlight a pool of deaf interpreters.
Like our Breaking Down Broadway and things that's expanded our interpreter pool. But we have more interpreters and we have more shows, but we need more deaf coaches to cast
the
on.
Coaches.
It's
the coaches. The
And
coaches.
also, there isn't training out there for deaf coaches. So we've created some models where once we have somebody trained, then we bring them in to intern until they're ready, then they're on a show, then they intern somebody. But we're looking to formalize that better. And we have some amazing colleagues out there, deaf colleagues who we are partnering and sponsoring. And you're right. I'm glad you remembered to mention that. In 2024, we're looking to really standardize our approach and train more deaf coaches. Yeah.
So for any and all of that was. It's like locking that in. That's why you need a partner, right? Two brains always
true.
shooting.
Exactly.
100%.
But for any and all of these things, what is the best way for people, anybody, to access what you do? Handsupproductions.com?
Yeah.
Yeah, they can. We send out email lists, social media stuff. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. On our website, you can sign up, add to our mailing list, and you'll get our email blasts that we send out. But yeah, our calendar's there, so our whole calendar shows for the season. Anything that we have booked goes on a calendar on the website.
And anything that isn't booked but you want to go see in the city, reach out to us. We have great relationships with theaters in Philadelphia, and if it's not already on our calendar but there's interest, we probably can get it on the calendar.
Okay, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
If you're a deaf consumer and there's something you wish you had access to in the future, they could email you through handsupproductions.com and you can start that dialogue with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we've done before the Kimmel Center. Neil deGrasse Tyson came and talked.
Oh my God.
So somebody wanted to go to that.
I can't understand him in English.
Did we do that?
I think we did.
I feel like
that.
we
Yeah,
did
yeah,
that.
Wow.
But they requested, we connected them to the Kimmel Center. They provided the interpreter. So if there's something like that, they'll definitely let us reach out and let us know.
The Philadelphia theater community, again, really is serious about providing access. So they're just great partners to work with.
Well, guys, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming
thank
on.
you.
I
This
hope
was fun.
anybody has any other questions, they know how to reach out to you. And outside of that, I hope 2024 is an amazing year for Hands Up Productions.
I'm sure it will be.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You got it.